everyone. So we're going to get started again. If you couldn't hear us, and we're going to get started, we'll go through this quickly. So thanks for attending the webinar today. We've got information-packed webinar, a little technical glitch there. But by the end of this webinar, you guys will know how to get more, collect more for the work you've already done. And now, Daryl, we'll have you introduce yourself for a quick second first.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Daryl here. I'm the COO at Frontline. I spent about 25 years in AmLaw 100 and 200 firms as a COO and a CFO.
Great. Thanks, Daryl. And Mike?
Mike Ferdman, Senior VP of Financial Services for Frontline. I've been working in the legal industry for 29 years.
Awesome. Thanks. And you, Melissa?
Melissa Duff, VP here at Frontline. I've been with Frontline for over 17 years.
Great. Thank you. And then, for those that don't know, Daryl, why don't you explain to everyone what RCM is, or Revenue Cycle Management is?
Sure. So just for everybody, Frontline's been in the legal industry for about 30 years. On the revenue cycle management side of the business, we started out as cash management solutions. So some of you who have been around as long as I have might still think of us as that. For revenue cycle managed services, we have three parts of our business: AR management, which we're going to focus a lot on today. Then we have billing, and we have e-billing services.
Great. Thanks, Daryl. I appreciate that. And then, hey, Mike, as we close the third quarter, what's the current state of the AR in the legal industry?
Well, I've got good news. So far, firms are doing very well. Rate increases for this year are higher than they've been in a long time, higher than last year. Many firms reporting well over 10%. Hours worked and hours billed are up, so demand is up. Those two things together are driving, revenues higher by at least 10% across the industry. Those are data, points that we gather from our firms. We have data from almost 150 law firms across the country and around the world. But we'd like to pause here and as we get some feedback from how your firms are doing.
Great, yeah. So we really want to know how confident you guys all are through your AR collections. You might have seen this a few minutes ago when you had no volume or audio with us, but now we've got the audio. Are you guys very confident, somewhat confident, not confident at all? You're just really not sure where you're at with your AR collections? It's good feedback to see what everyone else is feeling about it as we finish the third quarter and head to that home stretch the last 90 days of the year. So appreciate you guys filling out the poll with us. And then here we are there. We've got 12 that are somewhat confident. We have one that's very confident there, and not confident, a couple people that are not confident there. So we do guys appreciate you guys filling it out. We won't go further now into our next part of it. And Mike, this one's for you. Tell us about the average bill to cash cycle and why it's crucially important.
So bill to cash, that's from invoice date to pay date, and how long does that take? And we wanted to talk about that because while revenues are good, profits are up, we're seeing the bill to cash cycle lengthen, 3-4 days so far this year. So that impacts cash flow. Other impacts that we're seeing, costs are up. And so while profits are up, costs are up more than expected. And then what we're also seeing is, the potential for this government shutdown. We have had some experience with that, as you guys all know, in the past. Anytime there's a threat of a government shutdown, payments seem to slow. A few years ago, we had an actual government shutdown, and that really impacted revenue performance. And revenue performance, we can say that, revenues are up, but many firms budgeted forecasted for larger than a 10% increase. So while you may be doing well currently, as far as looking increases versus last year, that may not mean that you're meeting budget.
Appreciate that, Mike. Thanks for that information there. We're going to go to our second poll question. And our second poll question is really important here. How are you all feeling about your current, how are you all viewing your current firm's financial performance data? Do you guys have a manual report you run? Does somebody give you a dashboard within your law firm? Do you have a robust analytics system that might have AI as part of it, or it might not, but just robust analytics? And then no consistent view where, just basically it's haphazard on your results there. So please complete the poll there and how you guys are currently viewing your firm's financial data and performance. That would be really appreciated, and thank you. Okay. All right, so You got some basic dashboards, which is good. Manual reports. There's a bunch of people, surprisingly, with manual reports. And a few people with robust analytics. Congratulations on that. Nobody has no consistent view, which is even better. But the manual reports, interesting on that one there. So thank you. We're going to go to the next one now, and then we're going to have Daryl walk us through what we call the realization curve and its impact that delays have in collecting cash on the firm.
Yeah, so thanks, Michael. So increased revenue is always one of the, if not the primary goal of all of the law firms. And to me, you can look at this two different ways. You know, the first one is, and we've all had them, is you can have a less than comfortable conversation in front of all the attorneys that says, hey, you need to do more work and you need to stop discounting off of your rack rates. So that's not a lot of fun. So then we look at the second part, which is, let's try to collect more work let's try to collect more on the work we've already performed. And how do we get about this? It's first, you have to look at the right data, and then you have to act on the data that you find. So I'm going to start with one of the most high level analysis that we perform with our clients, and that's the cumulative realization curve. And what this is we take a look at the last 2 years of client and collection data for your firm. And from that, we look at the current balances, and we're able to very accurately predict that absent any changes or any different way that you're going about your collections, we can really pinpoint what your expected collection is going to be on the month and on the year. And we do this with every one of our clients. And last year it was really fun because we had a conversation with one of our clients that was projecting at least 15% more than what we were tracking here. And you can imagine it's kind of uncomfortable conversations where we're second guessing ourselves. Well, we get to December 1 and guess what? We were dead on. And they came back to us and they were like, well, we made a mistake here. What do we do? And this is how we work with our clients. But this cumulative realization curve is really interesting because what it's really doing is it's taking your entire portfolio as it ages. So when we get to 30 and 60, and let's just say 90 days. So at 90 days, what we're measuring is everything that's 90 days and older. And of that, we're saying, hey, of that entire portfolio, your expectation is to collect 69 cents on the dollar. And you can just imagine, like, this is one of these charts where when I was a CFO, where I could sit in front of an entire partnership and I could have this conversation to say, hey, look, you're leaving this much money on the table. It's pretty easy to quantify it. And so what we do from this large holistic look at a cumulative realization curve is then we can go in and we can segment it by practice group, by billing attorney, by client, and we can really focus in on what the client behaviors are. And our whole goal here is we know delays create less collections. So the idea is to shift this left. And you know, we work with our clients because some of this is really being intentional about the process, because we know that you're going to have partner A that says, hey, I want you to call my client. I want you to call him every day. And we'd say, well, your client pays at 45 days. That is not the problem, right? We really want to get to the problem clients that are resulting in less revenue coming in. So that's just a real high level way that we do this. And just so anybody on this call, if you go through what we call a BAR, a basic assessment review with us, we will show you this curve. So awesome. I'm going to be done with the high level part of that, and I'm going to turn it over to the people that really know this business. So I'm going to turn it over to Melissa.
Awesome. Thanks, Daryl. That was good information. So Melissa, tell us now what people could do about that to collect more.
Thanks, Michael. What I'm going to start by framing the conversation around what high-performing firms are doing differently when it comes to billing and collections. Traditionally, firms are looking at aging buckets, 30, 60, 90 plus. High-performing firms are starting to move towards a more behavior-based view. Instead of just like a 30, 60, 90-day buckets, they're looking at current, they're looking at slow pay, they're looking at disputed, they're looking at stalled. Why this shift matters is because it directs your energy. It directs it to where the recovery is more likely to happen. The second is proactive outreach. These firms they have dedicated AR staff, clear defined workflows, and they involve their partners as needed. Everybody knows their role, everybody knows what they're supposed to do, and I think that's very important, and that's why they are high performing. The last one is leaning on technology enablement, dashboards. I don't know if you're current firms that work with us, we've developed dashboards. We have one called the Operational Control Center, where we can look at different trends. We track trends. There's also technology enablement that's automatic reminders. That's something that's high performing firms are using. These tools bring transparency across the firm. I just looked on Daryl's last slide, and it said, you can't rely on hope. Kind of a phrase I always like to say is visibility is the difference between hoping it's going to get collected and knowing exactly where to focus. And I think that's important. And that's the foundation on how high performing firms are standing out. Next
Great.
slide.
Thanks, Melissa. Appreciate that.
Sure. So how do we actually make the visibility happen? It starts with behavioral-based segmentation. Instead of waiting until the invoices are past due, we look at payment patterns in real time. Again, I go back to our OCC dashboard. That gives us the opportunity to look at those payment patterns. That means spotting the slow but reliable payers versus who is truly stalled or in dispute. This distinction, in my mind, is critical. It lets us know which dollars are truly collectible, especially at year end. That's something you really want to have availability towards. The tools and practices behind this, including, oh, I'm sorry, I jumped to the next slide. My apologies, Mike, 13.
That's okay. Awesome.
The tools and practices behind this, they include identifying payment trends, which are important, prioritizing collection based on recovery probability, and aligning data transparency between AR managers and AR partners. I think looking at all of these things and the relationships that we have with the AR managers and partners, all of those together, they are able to develop a weekly cadence. They're reviewing things, they're prioritizing things, they know when to act, they're tracking that progress, they're escalating things as they need to be escalated. And I think that with them doing this on a weekly basis, that rhythm creates momentum and keeps things from slipping through the cracks, which we know is very easily can very easily happen.
Yeah. As Daryl said, once you hit 90 days, that's 69% might be collected. You have 31 cents out of every dollar that might not be collected at that point if you're not managing it properly. And that's really crucial. Thanks for that information.
Yeah. So why is data visibility and expert support, why it matters? I mean, at the end of the day, it's tangible results. So first, visibility creates control. Fewer surprises, more predictability. I'd like to be able to see, even though looking at these dashboards, I can see average days to pay. But on top of that, I also use my proactive nature that we talked about in the last one. And I know if something is supposed to come in and we're getting towards year end and it's a high dollar and I need to make sure that comes in, I'm not relying that it's going to necessarily come in. I'm still going to have that contact with that client to say, hey, I know you typically pay in 30 days, just check and make sure you got those invoices. And we'll talk more about that, just being more proactive. Again, to make sure nothing slips through the cracks, because that's very important, again, especially at year end when you're trying to meet those year end expectations or goals. Secondly, expert support improves realization and reduces your DSO or your days of AR. We'll talk more about kind of how the billing and collections relationship together can definitely help in improving your days of AR, because they mirror together. I mean, if billing is making errors, it's going to make that collection process even longer. So we're going to talk about that here in a little bit on the next slide. The outcome faster, cash flow stronger. Oh, I'm sorry. I missed benchmarking, which is very important because many firms like to hear what other firms are doing. It keeps them sharp and competitive. I know that many firms ask this on a monthly basis because they want to know how they're doing against their peers. So benchmarking is very important.
And Melissa, I just wanted to kind of plug in here a little bit too, because it's pretty common out there to benchmark firm to firm, but the way that we look at and segment data, we can find similar size practice groups within a firm. And we can tell you, hey, an insurance defense practice that's the same size, here's their performance. And, we can combine like 4 or 5 different clients and just say, here's what our peer industry does compared to where you are. So it's just another layer or 2 deep that we can go into benchmarking. So it's not just AmLaw 30 against AmLaw 25 firm. We're going to say, no, that's not your peer in terms of our data. And we're not going to say who it is, but we're going to say
Right.
firm ABC is who we consider to be your 3 peers.
It's good information. And Melissa, for those on the webinar that don't have experience with that terminology, what's DSO mean?
Days sales outstanding, but we typically use days of AR.
Got it. Appreciate
Yep.
that. Thanks.
One
Awesome.
other thing I'll add, Melissa brought up that, at year end, it's good to know your client's payment behavior. We call that average days to pay. One benefit of knowing that, you can play the calendar game and know when to bill your clients. If a client pays you reliably at every 42 days, when that bill has to go out before the end of the year if you're going to get paid by the end of December. And it's not December. It's definitely going to be a November date. So we use that, and we feed that information to our clients so that they can get those bills out timely and work the calendar correctly.
Awesome. That's good information. Appreciate that. Thank you. And then Melissa, let's move on to the next now. Once you've tell us.
So 3 moves we can make before year end. Rethink billing and AR habits. Let's start with billing. One of the biggest differences between firms is we see how quickly high-performing firms get their bills out. Old habits, attorneys like to hold on to their bills. They like to add little notes. This can lead to big delays. High-performing firms are shifting to like weekly or potentially automated billing to avoid these slowdowns. The impact is that firms that shorten their billing cycles improve realization on an estimate of 3 to 5%. That's huge.
Yep.
And that's just a small adjustment that you're making in the billing. The same goes for collections. Instead of waiting for 60 to 90 days, top firms are using dashboards to look at risk clients or look at payment trends and reaching out sooner before the due date. I honestly, at year end, we typically ask our CSMs to do that in general because I'll talk about it below, but kind of some of the billing issues we run across as well as making sure that they have the invoices, which is very, it's important at year end, because if they don't have the invoices, you have just made the build a cycle or build a payment time, build a cash time, excuse me. I'm trying to rush this and I don't want to do that, but I'm trying to get in the build a cash cycle that much longer. So if you just take the time and ensure that the invoices got to the client, there's no hiccups, that's going to be beneficial in the long run for firms.
Great, thanks. And Mike, did you have something to add on the shortening the bill, the actual billing cycle? I thought somebody should chime in.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Oh, I didn't know if you had something to add on the shortening the billing cycle. I thought you were going to say something about.
Yeah, no, Michael, that change that can cut like 10 to 15 days.
Wow, that's awesome.
Directly improve cash flow. So I think that's again, just a minor adjustment that you make that's going to make a huge impact on the firm.
It's interesting how these little levers, I call them, that you can pull really change the outcome. Awesome. So let's go to the next one there, Melissa. Continue.
Yep, we're going to go to manage leakage before it happens, and we're talking about write-offs. Old habits write-offs are handled manually, usually after a client complains. Typically, that's when a CSM or one of our AR managers is reaching out. That's typically when it's identified. High-performing firms are using dashboards. They're using those dashboards to track their budgets, their staffing, their hours in real time, and it alerts them with flags when there are issues or concerns. That approach itself reduces unplanned write-offs by an estimated 15 to 20%, and it builds client trust.
That's great.
And that brings us back to the AR segmentation, moving beyond the aging buckets and behavior-based targeting that lets teams focus their time on dollars most likely able to be recovered. And then the last one, which is number 3, which is just creating alignment and rhythm. When it comes, or when firms share behavior-based data with partners and set clear expectations, accountability increases. And you'll be amazed at the amount of firms that don't want to share that information. But I think it's, I mean, having that accountability is huge.
Melissa, I'll add one in on there too. I remember sitting in front of a partner meeting of 100 partners out there, and one of them just looked at me and said, just tell us where the strike zone is and we'll throw a ball through there. So that just kind of, it was a light bulb to me that we don't do an effective job of communicating. Here's what the expectations are and here's why. Because they will do it, but you have to tell them this is what's expected.
Yep. And at the end of the day, stalled items are escalated with document outreach, so nothing is slipping through the cracks. Especially when there's more accountability, nothing is slipped through the cracks. And when it comes back to rhythm, it goes to that weekly cadence, the review, the action, the escalation. It builds momentum across the team when everybody's on the same page. So I think that's highly important. Just to wrap it all together, high-performing firms aren't working harder. They're just breaking old habits. They're using visibility to focus smarter and build discipline around billing and collections. And now they can achieve faster cash, stronger relationships, and better outcome across the board.
Awesome. Thanks, Melissa. I appreciate that. And then part of what our process is that I think we said we have over 120 some odd firms, if not more, that we do this for. So we do what's called a baseline assessment review. And that's, Mike, you want to talk for 30 seconds about what that is and why it's important for firms that don't have that?
So, yeah, the idea here is to really get behind the numbers. So our financial performance assessment, or the bar that Michael was talking about, really is a very in-depth view. No matter what kind of time and billing system you're on, for the most part, we're going to tear that apart and reorganize the data so that we can look at it at a number of different ways. Obviously, by from the top down, by firm, by client, by matter, by invoice, but also by different types of attorneys, by different client behavior profiles. Large clients versus small clients, every kind of behavioral aspect, and the time intervals, between when something is worked and when it's billed and when it's paid, and the percentages and the realizations off of that. So there's a whole host of information that leads to where are the opportunities to improve? How does that firm perform down to a very granular level, so that you start to find the areas where you can, affect change. As an example, many firms are doing very well managing their largest marquee clients. That's where everyone spends their time and focus. What's interesting when you start to see the data is to look at, smaller clients. It's that 80-20 rule. Many of your clients are smaller balance, but it adds up to huge numbers. And so you have a large number of small balance clients that need more focus. How do you spend your time focusing on the ones that need the attention, so that you're getting, a real view of where you can have the impact? And if you can raise those smaller client balances and raise their realization, it all flows right to the bottom line. That's an example of how we can take a firm's data and make it actionable.
Great. Thanks, Mike. And as part of that also, since we have so many firms we do business with, we can, if you're within a certain industry segment, we can then compare that to
Correct.
With that industry segment as well. And you can get a good baseline of how you compare to them as well on that, which is really important.
I'll add to that, our data view of the industry assessment that we do, the benchmarking that we do, that is not self-reported data. Many of the other benchmarks that are available in the industry, firms get to manipulate, sanitize, report how they want. We don't allow our firms to do that. This is a raw data feed. So the good, the bad, and the ugly, you'll get a true representation of how you perform versus your peers.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Thanks. And Melissa, you want to add something on that?
Nope, I was going to say he's absolutely correct. That's raw data.
Great. Appreciate that. And now we're going to go to our Q&A. If we filled had a poll questionnaire, if you want to fill it out, if you feel like you'd like a baseline assessment review or financial performance review, feel free to put that in there, but we'll go to some questions. So if there are any, please, moderator, give us the questions.
Yeah.
All right, were
Well,
there
we
any
can
questions?
flip up the queue. Okay, go
All right.
ahead.
Yeah, one of the questions in the chat here is from Robin. She says, curious if you have recommendations or tools that assist with proactive AR risk assessment when taking on a new client, especially with litigation or family law matters.
So I think we're talking about, credit risk scoring, controlling risk on taking a new client in. So that is part of the client intake and conflicts checking function. We do perform those services, and we have a lot of information we can share that probably would be outside of the scope of this conversation about how do you protect yourself in those situations and whether or not it needs to be retainers, or how you might manage something where you're worried about the viability of a client paying you.
Mhm.
Yeah, we always said if asking them for a retainer, if they don't want to give you a retainer, that's your first red flag.
Yeah.
We have quite a few questions coming in here, actually. So next one, what percentage of firms are using AI in cash forecasting?
So
Very few.
I'll take that. I mean,
Right.
not as many as you would think. And one of the things that we're doing is we're actively rolling out our next generation of what we call our Iris software, which is our proprietary software. And we're using AI agents inside of there. And so right now we're just training them so that when we feel comfortable with what they're going to give us in terms of results, we're going to be the thought leaders in that area.
Great. And next one, does Frontline have active dashboards that are different from the Iris reports?
Yes, we have, if they're currently a client with us, we have what's called OCC dashboards, operational control centers, which for most firms, and the firms themselves are the I want to say the people managing our team, and even I think up to the CFOs may have access to those. And if you don't currently have access to those, reach out to any of us. If you have a director of ops that you talk to often, let them know that you would love to have access to that. And they will also give you kind of a walkthrough of how to utilize the dashboard, because I think you'll find it very useful. And going a step further, if there's something in there that you are not seeing that you would like to see, absolutely let us know that as well, because we're more than happy to accommodate that.
Yeah, we have dashboards that are doing forecasting where the dashboards can isolate problem clients that are escalated to management. There's a whole host of features besides the fact that our people use it, as we mentioned, just to spot trends and be more productive in how they go about their daily work.
Yep.
Next question, what does high performing look like in terms of average bill to cash cycle days?
So we have clients that are as low as 48 days bill to cash cycle. The average in the industry is 72 days. And we have seen data sets from firms that are well over 100 days. So best in class, it does depend on your client mix, but best in class, they operate very clean, have lower write-offs, higher collection realization in the 95% range. That's all just getting more from what the work you've already done and do it faster.
Next question, if you have a dashboard showing collection risk, what's the first metric you look for?
Collection. So I would say probably the first thing is, has their behavior changed? If a client's paid you very reliably a number of times at 42 days, I don't need to really react to that. But if they're at 50, well, what happened there? And I don't need to wait for any more information than that to know that I probably need to react. Maybe it was a skipped invoice, whatever. But I would react to those, very quickly.
And I think it goes back to the proactive approach as well. I mean, especially our AR managers, or we call them CSMs, they have great relationships with our client or with the clients within the firm. And they know if Peggy over at some client is going out on a Disney trip with their kids, they know like things that are happening, and they're making sure they stay in touch to say, hey, Peggy, I know you just got back. I know you were out. You have 200 emails. Just want to make sure you got my invoice in line for payment. It's those proactive measures that I think that our CSMs, with their relationships that they have, not only with clients, but with attorneys, are able to make sure that they're on top of those things if they do happen, or if they do see them.
I think that's all the questions here. I'm just doing another
Great.
look through the chat, but I think that's everything.
That was a wealth of information, everyone. I think everyone got a lot of great information from this webinar. So thank you all, Daryl, Mike, Melissa, for being on today. And so everyone, thank you for being here. And we'll have a recording if you guys want to get a copy of it. We'll also, if you want an assessment, we'll be following up and make sure to get you on that list as well. And appreciate everyone's time today.
Hey,
Thank you so
Michael,
much.
let me give
Yeah,
one little closing
sure.
statement in here
Yeah.
because it just kind of came to me as we were talking through all
Of
this.
course.
If you want to accelerate behavioral change inside of your firm with everything that we've talked about and getting the right data, the one piece of data that we don't have here, and we probably don't want to have here, is how your compensation system works, how the partner compensation systems work. So if you can take the at-risk total and you can correlate that to what it means for partner take-home pay at the end of the year, you can really shine a pretty bright light on this. But first you have to have the data, and then you have to have a way to just kind of reach out and grab them, which is, if you were to do this, here's another $1,000 per share, right? Or per point. So there are really fun tools that you can use in here if you have the data right.
Awesome. Thanks. Appreciate that, Daryl. And we definitely have the data for our clients. That's why we're so great at doing this work. So appreciate everyone's time again. Thank you. And we'll send
Thank
out
you.
copies. And have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.